Hello, triumphant Lutheran Church community. Those that we see in person and those that we see online. I am Deacon Chris, and I have been back in the office, back from sabbatical for about 6 weeks now. But I have had several people ask about how sabbatical was. And a few weeks ago, we had an opportunity to share in person what some of the sabbatical was about. But for many of you that were not able to be there or are online, we were not able to share that. And so I thought I would make a video and offer some of the same thoughts and reflections that we had during that time. So I wanted to take a few minutes and just tell you a little bit about my sabbatical time and sort of the impact that it had and the direction going forward for me and for us. And so first, I talked a lot about the trips that we went on. Sabbatical afforded me an opportunity to go on a couple longer trips. Most summers are broken up by things like summer camp and mission trips and other things like that. And so what this afforded me was an opportunity to take a longer trip that I didn't have to cut short or have like a week window to get back for another church activity. So we did 2 long trips. We took the kids on the typical RV road trip. We flew to Boise, Idaho, and took a trip visiting some national parks and state parks throughout Idaho and Wyoming. We drove through a little part of Montana, but got to see things like Yellowstone and Grand Teton and a national area called City of Rocks and Craters of the Moon, and then some Idaho state parks. And it was just an awesome opportunity to take the kids to see that part of the country, a part of the country that I had never been before. But to just see them and to witness it with them was awesome. We also took a 2-week trip to go visit my family, who quite a bit of my extended family lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And so we did a road trip out there and stopped a couple times on our way out and then spent a couple weeks with my family out there and then came back. But we did some awesome trips, and that was great. At the beginning of sabbatical, we moved. We had a house formerly in Universal City. We were renting and we purchased our first home. And we now live in Converse, so just about 5 minutes away from our old home. But most of sabbatical I was spent when I was home getting situated into the house. And so we were able to do that stuff and to get settled, and we are happy and love our house. We've met many of our neighbors and enjoy the place that we have there. And the big thing for sabbatical was the learning component. I mean, that is what a sabbatical is about giving an opportunity to learn and to reflect when it's not just to get ready for the next thing. So oftentimes in ministry, I'm reading or I'm reflecting because I have a meeting coming up or a Bible study coming up. And so this was an opportunity for me to learn about some things that were kind of big picture things, those umbrella items, those things that guide me generally, but I don't oftentimes have an opportunity to read. And so I focused on diaconal ministry, on what it means for me to be a deacon and what this type of ministry, what makes it unique in the Lutheran Church. Because the most common question I get is, what is a deacon and how is it different than a pastor? I realize those are 2 questions. So there are 2 questions that I get. What is a deacon and how is it different than a pastor? And so I spent some time learning about that, reflecting about that, learning about how deacons historically all throughout the centuries have come out and have served in a variety of different contexts. And so that's part of the reason why it's hard to define sort of what a deacon has always done, because it's kind of always been different. It's the role in the church that responds to a particular context. And so I learned things like throughout history, for a while, deacons served the role of preparing people for baptism. And so they did that, they performed that role. Then a lot of deacons were in charge of the administration of communities, that pastors were focused on preaching and doing the sacraments and funerals and weddings and those kinds of things. And the deacons were focused on the administration side of things, of the financial side of things and that kind of stuff. You learned about how many of the deaconesses in a couple centuries ago were the first teachers and nurses and those kinds of people. And they served a need for a purpose. And then when that need was not needed anymore, then you kind of see them less and less present. And so I learned about that, and learning about how a lot of ways in my role, I'm called to serve in a particular context for a particular need. And that's part of it, is understanding what that context and what that need is. And so I learned about those. I learned about some theology of what diaconal ministry is. But it was a great opportunity for me to think and to reflect about the things that I bring to it and the ways that I can best represent it and help explain it. And one of the things that I reflected on a lot is in the church community, we are all called to serve. And so what does it mean for me to serve, to be the one that's doing the dishes, to be the one that's mowing the yard or setting up audiovisual equipment? And to what extent is my role to equip other people to do things? So to help you all as you all are serving. And so what does it mean for me to help you feel more qualified to serve? And so what does it help for me to be able to help you in your jobs, professionally, or in your vocation as parents or spouses or anything like that? The other piece that I thought about a lot was about the ways in which the church is called to lift up ministers, to notice those people in our congregation that have the gifts for ministry. And we do that. But the common problem is that when we think of ministry, we think of them as just pastors. And so one of the things that I reflected a lot on was how I can help our congregation lift up people that are in ministry, but then be able to answer that second question of the type of ministry. So to be able to say, you have the gifts for ministry, and I believe it's pastoral ministry, or I believe it's diaconal ministry. And so one of the things that I can do in the ways that we talk about what diaconal ministry is, the ways in which we exhibit it, the ways that which we serve, are all going to help us not only just serve our community and serve the needs of our community, but also to be able to lift up people within our community to say, you have the gifts of ministry, and to put them in places of leadership. And so those are the things that I did on sabbatical. It was a wonderful time for me to sit and to rest and to spend time on trips and reflecting on doing these things. And so going forward, I hope to be able to continue to offer these thoughts, to continue to help us all understand what this role of deacon is, so that we can understand the ways in which you and I can serve and the ways that we can serve, but also the ways in which we can lift up and notice other people's service and support them and encourage them in those lives. And so I want to thank you for giving me the gift of sabbatical. I want to thank you for being a part of praying for me and praying for my family as we did that. And I hope and pray that you would continue to be a part of this, that we would continue to have these conversations about what diaconal ministry is, that we can do ministry together, serving and figuring out what it is that Triumphant is here to do, both as individuals and as a community together. Peace, and we will see you soon.